Back in 2024, about 6 weeks before the election, I released a video about the enigma of Kamala Harris, detailing a little bit about how unknown she was and how little there was out there about her background and her family and the questionableness of it. And there was another candidate at the time that was promising America first and secure borders and freedom, for me especially, as a God-fearing First and Second Amendment loving guy, and Fourth Amendment too, which comes into play later. I believe we have some really good founding fathers who wrote some great constitutional protections, and I believe that they need to be uninfringed. And back in 2024, I felt the Democratic Party was a greater risk of infringing my rights than the Republican Party. And I voted for Donald Trump. He promised America first, was going to look after the concerns and prosperity and security of our country. Fast forward to the last, 2026 really, the last week and a half in Minneapolis. I've seen things I wish I had never seen happening. It started with execution of Renee Good in her car. Probably guilty of a traffic violation. The ICE officer drove past her, stopped after getting past her, which kind of defeats the argument she was blocking the road, and then gets out of his car and circles around. She's nice to him. The next two officers come up and approach, and their first orders are get the F out of the car and start reaching in the door handle. And the car's in gear at the time they're saying this and approaching her, all masked up, faceless, nameless, nothing cordial about it, not asking her to move, just get the F out. The shooting officer steps in front of her vehicle at that time when the car's in gear, and she proceeds to roll out because she's freaked out. The only officer to draw his gun is the guy who stepped in front of the car while it was in gear, and he proceeds to put one bullet into the windshield while the other ICE officer had his arm in the door, probably scaring the crap out of the other ICE officer. And then he proceeds to put two more rounds through the driver's side window and kill the woman as she leaves, driving past him, which defeats the argument she was trying to run him over. The fact that she turned away, and she wasn't turning after she was shot, she was turning before she was shot. Because after she shot, she was dead. There's no argument she was trying to get out of there because she was afraid. And she was afraid because they were rushing her car with masks and guns and stepping in front of her trying to impede her. She couldn't move. The guy was circling around her car. Where was she supposed to go? Well, he was walking around. Back up to the side. They put her in an impossible situation and they shot her for it. The only guy afraid for his life was the one that drew his gun, right? None of the other officers were afraid. None of them even reached for a gun. That tells you how scary she was. If she was threatening or scary, more than one officer out of the 10 would have reached for their sidearm. So she was shot down, executed, because a dumb officer stepped in front of her vehicle trying to stop her. Cowboy hero. Violating, I'm sure, several procedures. Then, later on in the week, I see a 17-year-old kid working at Target in the middle of the day. Up rolls a bunch of SUVs on the side of the parking lot there, and he's out there, and out comes the Homeland Security boss and some goons. And they ask him, hey, we're, basically American citizen. He's like, hey, but none of your freaking business. I'm just working here, and I'm going back and work, basically. Screw you. He's mad because they're harassing him. They engaged him asking about his citizenship. And he's there working. He's at Target. Why don't they ask Target about his citizenship? Ask Target if they're employing illegal immigrants. I'm betting they're not. I'm betting he produced ID and got a job with Social Security number just like the other people there. Go ask Target. You don't need to harass a 17-year-old kid. And he's scared, right? So he starts retreating to the store, and big, tall, goony dude, another nameless, faceless thug, chases him down, tackles him in the doorway to the store, and with 6 other officers piling on top of him. While the other officers protect the entrance and exits so they can pick him up and drag him out. Only to find out he's an American citizen and dump him off later down the road. 17-year-old kid at work, American. Just because they don't like the way he looked? That's stupid. That's illegal. That should be illegal. Those guys should every one of those guys that tackle him should be facing some kind of consequence. The boss should be fired for letting those guys do that. No cause. No suspicion other than what he was.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you're doing great from whatever you're watching us from. You know, there's one thing that I usually say. You wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, and you think that you're proud of yourself, probably because of some decisions that you make. Trust me, if there's that one person that you cannot lie to, is you. I mean, you cannot lie to yourself. You can lie to everyone. Probably you can get away with all things that you want, but you cannot lie to yourself. You're standing up on the mirror, looking at yourself and saying, damn, I really messed up. And I thought that the decisions that I was making the right decisions. Turns out that 90% of the time, you're making the wrong decisions. This is a perfect example of what is happening with some white people. People that are coming out, but at least they have the conscience. They have understood that what they did was wrong. The decisions that they made was wrong. We are seeing white people coming out and talking about all these issues, but the issue is not even coming out and talking about these issues. The issue is recognizing the part that they have played in making America worse. The decisions that they have made, see, the decisions that they have made is making it hard for everyone, including them. Brothers and sisters, what you're about to see white people. This video features two men who are confessing. Indeed, they made a great mistake by voting Mr. Donald Trump. So I want you to watch this video. I'm gonna be back and then I'll be sharing my thoughts regards to this. And if you're watching me for the first time, you know I'm your host and pre didnt Story. So stay tuned, let's learn, and let's watch the video. I'll be back.
What could they know about him? He didn't like them, and that he looked not like them. That's all they know, and they acted. There's no denying it. Watched another guy going to church on a Sunday morning in a F-150 like I'm sitting in right now. ICE thinks he's following them. He's going to church in his neighborhood. They get out, and the guy on the driver's side pounding on his window, cussing him out. The guy on the passenger side has his gun drawn. The guy's in his neighborhood going to church on Sunday morning. They're cussing him out, telling him to go home and stop following. They don't ask him if he's following, they just do it. Another lady sitting in the car in a traffic jam going to the doctor's office. They drag her out because she's not happy. She's a disabled lady going to the doctor's office. I watched her get dragged out and cuffed. Protesters protesting, just saying mean words. They get rushed and tackled and knocked down and arrested for saying things, making noise. Just for words. Watched them tackle a guy at a gas station and asking about citizenship. Kids at a school asking about citizenship, just on the sidewalk. Want to know where people are born. Based on what? All those arrests are illegal. Fourth Amendment protects you from illegal search and seizures. All these ICE professionals, they should have to go before a judge. They should have to identify who they're after, go before a judge, get an arrest warrant, go arrest the people listed on a warrant, and leave everybody else alone. Act professional. If you don't like what somebody's saying, just do your job and ignore it. You're entrusted with a gun and a badge. You have to be in control of your emotions. If you can't control your emotions, you should not be wearing a gun and a badge. If you can't take somebody saying something you don't like, and you can't handle a little bit of noise, and you can't handle a little chaos, you should not be wearing a badge and a gun. You should be able to remain calm and do your job. Period. And if you arrest somebody, you should have a warrant. Or they should be doing something wrong right in front of you. Really wrong. Not just saying something. Or turning their car sideways. Or something silly like that. That's a civil infraction. That should have been left to the Minneapolis police. They should have just asked her to move and drove around her. It was one car. One lady. She would have moved. I guarantee she would have moved. They had the patience to wait, she would have moved. But they didn't have it. This is not what I voted for. This is nothing at all what I voted for. I voted for freedom. I voted for those people's right to protest. I voted for their right to be safe and secure on their own streets. I voted for the right to people to be safe and secure in their own homes. I voted for people to be free. I'm a freedom-loving, God-fearing American. I want to live peaceably with all men, and I want all men to live peaceably with me. This is not it. None of these people we're seeing are guilty of anything worthy of what I'm seeing. Why are there 3,000 troops in one town? Are there 3,000 people they're trying to deport? Why such a huge number? It doesn't make sense. The guy I voted for is not in office. He is not. The guy in charge of this, the guy that's sending his troops there, that's not what I voted for. He needs to go. I'm sorry I voted for him. I regret it. Because this is going to be murder. The midterm elections are going to be murder. The 2028 election is going to be murder for the Republican Party. They're done. If they can't purge Donald Trump and stop him, they're done. They're done. The Congress should be acting, passing laws. The judges should be passing injunctions. There should be more protesting in the streets, and I'm amazed. I am amazed that nobody shot an ICE officer yet. That's amazing to me. It's coming. I think that's what he wants. I think that'll provoke. I mean, why else would you be doing this? You're trying to provoke the opposition to do something stupid to justify more action. That would be the only reason why he'd be acting such a fool. And I hope nobody shoots an ICE officer, because I think that would just make it worse, because now he did justification to ramp this up. He's a menace. He's a menace. Donald Trump is a menace to our society. And apparently he's a menace to other societies too. He's got to go. I'm sorry I voted for him. He needs to go. It's terrible to say, but I admit I was wrong. I knew better than to believe him, and I did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to America I voted for him. The Democratic Party, put a better candidate out next time, and I'll vote for him or her, whoever it is. I don't even care. Give me a pro-Second Amendment candidate that thinks I should be able to pray in the street. You give me a candidate that'll say my daughter should be able to use the restroom without a man coming in there legally. I'm down with this. This has got to stop. Donald Trump's got to go. I'm sorry.
There's a moment when polite explanations stop working. When tight housing market and rising interest rates and supply chain issues don't explain why millions of Americans can't afford a roof anymore. And that moment is when you ask the question the country hates the most. Where do they expect us to go? Because if you can't afford to rent, can't afford to buy, or get into public housing or qualify for assistance, shelters are all full, waiting lists are years long, and family lives 3 states away, then what exactly is the plan for survival? No one ever answers that question directly, because the answer is ugly. The reality is this: you're not supposed to go anywhere. You're supposed to quietly disappear. You're supposed to figure it out without being seen. And you're supposed to solve your poverty off camera. You're supposed to decline quietly, starve quietly, freeze quietly, or move until you break. This is why the bans and the ordinances and the regulations that we see all rhyme together. They're not random. They're territorial. They're about containment. If you can't afford a house, well, you're told to go rent. You can't afford rent, you're told to downsize. But downsize where? Tiny homes are heavily regulated. Sheds in some states aren't even legal to live in. RVs and campers can't be parked on your property in some states. Van life is being criminalized in cities, and sleeping in cars is now a misdemeanor. And we all know what happens to tent encampments, don't we? If the apartment is too expensive and the alternatives are illegal, what exactly is the good citizen supposed to do here? The rich call it urban planning. The poor call it displacement. And us seniors, we call it exile. And people act shocked when retirees end up in Walmarts and Cracker Barrel parking lots. But where were they supposed to go? Into the luxury senior community they'll never afford? Into the nursing home that will extract their life savings until Medicaid paperwork clears? Into the shelter full of addiction, chaos, and violence? Into the spare bedroom of children who live paycheck to paycheck? I don't think so. America loves to chant, work hard and you'll be fine. But when hard workers get old, sick, and injured, widowed or laid off, or even priced out like I was, the chant suddenly changes to, not here, not in my neighborhood, not in this county, or this parking lot, or under this bridge, not in your van, not in this trailer, not on this land, not in this city. So again, my question stands. Where? Where can the elderly exist? Where can the disabled exist? Where can the poor exist? And where can the displaced exist? So where can anyone exist who doesn't produce enough rent to justify the square footage? Because here's the truth, nobody in city council chambers will say at a microphone. Housing isn't about shelter anymore. It's about yield. And I've covered this in a lot of my earlier episodes. After all, human beings who can't produce yield, they don't get a zone. They end up with citations, or worse, jail. Housing that was once a human right has become a financial instrument, then a speculative casino. Then it became a class filter. And now it's a compliance test. You see, if you can pay, well, then you can stay. But if you can't, you better move on. But again, move where? After all, they look at it as, well, that's not their problem. The cruelty isn't just that the system doesn't care. The cruelty is that the system here doesn't feel obligated to answer the question in the first place. So how did the last resort become illegal? Well, that's a good question. You see, when the rent is too high and the mortgage is out of reach and the waiting lists are closed and all the shelters are full, people do what human beings have always done when backed into a corner. They improvise, they adapt, they overcome. They downsize, convert, share, repurpose. They live smaller, or they live different. And this is not chaos. This is what I call resilience. And that's exactly why the system hates it the most. Because every time the poor or the elderly invent a workaround, it threatens the one thing the system worships above all else: compliance through dependency. And I've covered this in several of my earlier episodes. After all, you look at the list of last resort survival options that have exploded over the last 20 years. Tiny homes, shed and cabin conversions, van and RV living, trailer parks and manufactured homes, or multi-generational housing, rooming houses, car camping, and rural lots with off-grid setups like mine. All of these have one thing in common here. They allow people to survive cheaper than the market wants them to. And that can't be allowed. So instead of fixing the housing crisis, America chose the easier solution. Let's criminalize the alternatives. Tiny homes, some are banned, others are restricted by minimum square footage. requirements designed for McMansions and not for survival here. Sheds converted to cabins? Well, no. Suddenly they require residential zoning, permits, septic inspections, and electrical certifications. And it defeats the entire purpose of the building cheap. RVs and campers on your own land? That's illegal in a large part of this country. And not because it's unsafe, but because it violates community standards. Well, that's code for property values. And van living? We've all seen on YouTube what's going on with that. You get ticketed, towed, impounded, or banned, and no overnight sleeping, of course. Car camping? That's even getting worse. Criminalized from coast to coast through curfews and parking bans. Trailer parks? Well, they're turning them into luxury apartments on the land. Boarding houses and rooming houses are regulated out of existence for decades under zoning that forbids unrelated adults from living together. And of course, we have shared housing among seniors, often blocked by zoning restrictions that pretend to be about safety, but are really about aesthetics, let's face it. And when people finally pitch tents because there is nothing left at all, well, cities order police to clear the encampments for public health, as if homelessness is an infection instead of a policy outcome. And let's watch the sequence play out here. First, they price you out, then they ban the alternatives, then they criminalize your survival, and then they ask you why you're homeless. Sounds about right. Then they blame you for it. You see, this is not incompetence. This is what I call boundary enforcement. The poor are allowed to exist, just not here, not in view, not where real estate investors can see them, and not where property values might notice, and not where some neighborhoods where they think denial is fragile. And here's the saddest part. The people getting squeezed aren't the reckless, the irresponsible, or the lazy. They're the people who played by the rules their entire lives. Retired union workers in 20-year-old RVs. Seniors who paid off a modest home only to lose it to taxes or medical bills. Widows living in vans to stretch a small Social Security check. Disabled adults making $900 a month in cities where parking costs more than the rent used to. Working poor families and campers who would love an apartment, but they don't meet that 3 times the income requirement. And I'm sure some of my people here watching can share their own experiences in the comments below. I know I'm going to see some. I mean, here's my final thought. We pretend the housing crisis is about affordability. But affordability is just the surface problem here. The deeper problem is that the system decided there are correct ways to live, and being poor is not one of them. You see, it's not enough to survive. You must survive in a way that is aesthetically pleasing and profitable to the people in charge of the land. And that's what makes the bans make sense. Because alternative housing threatens the market, the yield, the narrative, and it threatens the illusion of national prosperity. Because if millions of people started living cheaply, openly, and successfully outside the sanctioned housing system, the lie would collapse overnight. Which brings me back to the question I asked earlier. If these forms of survival are banned, then where exactly is a person supposed to go? Because the society that outlaws the last resort isn't confused. It's eliminating the options. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for part 2. So until then, folks, let's rise together.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great from wherever you are watching us from, you know it's clearly, and it's important, and I've said it, and I'll say it, and I'll keep on saying it. If there is that one thing that you cannot do, is lying to yourself. And at some point, there's a saying that says, the more you fuck around, is the more you'll find out. So white people fucked around, and they found out that indeed they have been living in Trump bubble. It's been all a lie. Everything that they have been always been told about meritocracy, all that they have been told about all these issues, it has been a lie. The United States, it's for the rich people, it's not for the poor people. I hope you get to understand that. The corporate always cares only about the top 1%. The bottom 99%, you have to fend for yourself. And poor white people, and this is an history, we have studies that I've always tried to show or talk about this. Poor white people, why do you always vote against your own interest? Why do you always make decisions against like your own interest, right? Don't you see that these things affect you? Until when will it make sense to you that you need to look at yourself and stop lying to yourself that you're making a great decision? You cannot feed on whiteness, because that's a lie that they have always tried to give you. That's the lie that elites have always tried to give you. But they don't tell you that the prices of goods and services doesn't care about your color. But when you go to a grocery shop, you have to pay. They lie to you, but they don't promise you a better economy. They don't show you a better future. They don't show you all that you need to know or all that you want to know. So we are reaching at a point where white people are sitting down and saying to themselves that, oh, we really messed up. And indeed, we made a great mistake, and we need to correct the mistake that we made. And these are white people that are coming out and talking about all these issues. And so it's imperative that you understand that you waited to see the consequences, for you to understand what black people have been trying to tell you, for you to understand that black people were not mad, black people were not going nuts when they tried to warn you, all about all these things that are happening. So just think about it. Think about it. What did you stand to gain now that you followed whiteness? What did it pay your bill? Let me know. Show me the receipt. I used whiteness to pay for goods and services. This is my receipt. I want to see. Why don't you all see that you're being played? You have always been played for the longest time. Why don't you all don't see that you are being played? And I think that's the most important part that you need to see. And you need to understand. Right? So, brothers and sisters, I really don't know. But please, tell me probably what you think about this, because I find it diabolical that these people are so blind not to see how they were being played, how they were being tricked into all these games that we are seeing that are happening today. It all depended with you seeing, but you decided not to say because it was not affecting you like firsthand the way it was affecting black people. So please, let me know what you think and feel about this video. All right. But until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute. You all stay safe out there.